world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Wednesday, the 25th of February, year of our Lord 2026. Well, last night we had the State of the Disunion, and we're going to take a quick look at that. There wasn't much in terms of substance. A lot of things that people thought were going to be covered. I mean, we're gearing up for a war with Iran, but we're not going to talk about that too much. So we're going to look at the economy, the egonomics of Trump, the war, the ego politics. Even the Pentagon is having concerns about this war in Iran. They said, we're low on allies and ammunition, and this could be a very long fight. And then there's some new revelations about the Epstein files. Turns out that there's a missing 53 pages, and these involve 3 out of 4 interviews with a woman who claims that she was raped by Trump as a teenager. And the FBI took it seriously enough to do 4 interviews. 3 of those interviews are missing. And Gerald Slinty is going to be joining us, a New Trends Journal today on Wednesday. We're going to be talking about Trump and tariffs and, of course, what's going to happen in war. We'll be right back. Well, let's take a look at the State of the Disunion. The anticipation about it was much more interesting than the actual event. Zero Hedge was saying, well, this is going to be, could be a lot of fireworks here. He may go after the Supreme Court. They're going to be just sitting a few feet away from him. And Obama did that at one point in time in a State of the Union address. He was very upset with recent Supreme Court opinion. That didn't happen. You had 72 Democrats who decided to boycott the address last night. We're not going to be there. Everybody knew it was going to be a very long speech. One of the longest speeches that a president's ever given to a joint session was last year, when it was not a State of the Union yet, but it was a speech, and it was about an hour and 40 minutes long. I didn't even bother to look at how long this one was, but it was pretty long. A lot of the use of the term winning, in case you buy that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a long, padded, false resume. It basically was what it was. Very little discussion about the issues that people thought were going to be there. Like, for example, Iran. Everybody knows that he's gearing up, that war is imminent with Iran. No talk about that, really. It's kind of a little of an aside. And so some of the things that Zero Hedge thought that he might talk about, they said, well, he reportedly is planning to outline an unconventional idea for personal and corporate tax cuts that he could implement, of course, without Congress. Like I said before, we have the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and now we have a newly renamed emergency branch. That's what government has become. And so it's going to be what emergency orders is it going to do? But there was nothing about that. Nothing about a new idea for personal and corporate tax cuts. Trump has previously floated rebate checks for Americans that would be funded by tariff revenue. What tariff revenue? As a matter of fact, you just had FedEx, the first company to file a lawsuit. You see, the government takes your money and you got to sue to get it back. It's kind of like civil asset forfeiture, isn't it? Where they steal your car or your home or your cash. They say it's a civil procedure. It's not a criminal procedure. You weren't found guilty of any crime. You weren't even charged with a crime, but they stole your stuff anyway. And because they call it a civil procedure, because it's based on rules coming from the emergency branch of government, then you have to sue them to get your property back. And that's what it is now with the people who have paid these tariffs. They got to sue to get it back. Federal Express had said earlier this summer they were facing $1 billion charge because of Trump's tariffs, which amounted to 16% of their income. And so it's a big deal, and they are the first ones out of the gate to come back and ask for their money back in a lawsuit. Trump could emphasize, said Zero Hedge, plans that his administration has to lower housing costs. You know, things like, as they put it, barring institutional investors from snapping up single-family homes. Zero Hedge ought to know better than that. I had David Monson on, and he explained, here's what the research has shown. It's actually a very, very small footprint in the marketplace in terms of institutional investment. And in the markets that they invested in, those were not the markets that didn't have really an effect anyway in those markets. So that is something that presents really serious principle issues. Where do we, if we establish this as a precedent, where could this go? It's a very dangerous, very stupid idea. First of all, there's no pragmatic benefit to it. Secondly, it sets yet another Trump precedent that destroys the rule of law and the Constitution. Anyway, that was not mentioned either in the State of the Disunion. Scathing dressing down of the justices, well, that didn't happen either. As Reason pointed out, the 6th year of presidents has been notoriously bad for them. For Nixon, it's bad for Reagan. That's when Iran-Contra broke. It's bad for Bill Clinton. That was when the Monica Lewinsky thing happened. And it was basically had happened just before he gave his State of the Union, number 6, in his 6th year, I should say. And his response to that was just to ignore it, just to talk right past it, not even mention it, right? He had just had all this stuff. We had the press conference, and he's standing right next to Hillary Clinton. He says, well, I did not have sex with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. It was. And of course, Ken Starr let him off. Ken Starr let off Jeffrey Epstein as well, along with Alan Dershowitz and with Trump's Alex Acosta. So again, it's amazing to me how similar the Clintons and the Trumps are, really, when you take a look at it. It's amazing. As they say, history doesn't repeat, but it certainly does rhyme in a very creepy way. Very creepy way. So Trump was likely to address Iran during the speech, but very, very little about that. No case being made for the war there. And so you had, the transcript is there if you want to read it. But listen to this cheerleading coming from Breitbart. I went to Breitbart and I went to CNN because I want to get these two different bookends to see what people were saying about this thing. Frankly, folks, I'm not going to watch 2 hours of Trump rambling and lying and patting himself on the back. Not for anything. I'll take a look at the transcripts, but that's bad enough. I'm not going to waste my life that way. It's too short. Anyway, Breitbart. This is the way they capped it up. Screaming headlines that went on for a couple of pages. Trump hails the golden age. USA is bigger, better, richer, and stronger than ever before. Do you believe that? Got a bridge for you. Trump traps the Dems. They sit for the pledge to protect American citizens. They fell for it. They didn't stand up and clap, whatever. The blues bummer Dems stand for nothing. These people are crazy. Trump fires back at Omar and Tlaib as they melt down. Somali pirates, he says. And then the president touts successes. Border, inflation, fentanyl. We stopped all that fentanyl coming from Canada. How about that? Isn't that great? I mean, Canada was just flooding us with fentanyl. We stopped it right there. And so the murder rate, jobs, growth for America, and the end of DEI. And then the president accuses the Democrats, you caused that problem. POTUS faults Dems for the affordability crisis. Again, an inflated resume matched along with basically the Pam Bondi nastiness. Instead of defending yourself, you go on the warpath. You go on offense, and you get as offensive as possible. It's like all the disunion, the state of the disunion that is there. So again, lies and attacks. That is a strategy coming down from the top. And so CNN has their sound bites here. A turnaround for the ages. We're winning too much. Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world. The hottest. And the 250th anniversary of our glorious American independence. Yeah, it's really sad when you put it in historical perspective to see where we are after 250 years. Not much of American principles left, is there? And of course, they put all that stuff up in the foreground of Trump in the background saying that. Their comments, Trump is on the defense in multiple fronts. But, like Pam Bondi or War Pete, you change the defense to war. The State of the Union address was his chance to recast his unpopular mass deportation effort, to explain why U.S. warships are massing for military action against Iran, to stare down the Supreme Court justices who last week rejected his unprecedented use of tariffs. Then there were the Epstein survivors in the House chamber to push for more transparency. None of that happened, really, right? Transparency didn't happen either. But then you've got all the celebrations that they always do with these events. You've got the U.S. men's hockey team there. You've got multiple Medal of Honor and 2 Purple Hearts and a Legion of Merit and Medal of Freedom, so people can stand up and applaud for them. He had Erica Kirk there. There was verbal war with Democrats, some of whom shouted or walked out of the chamber, so Trump could call them crazy. This is the insanity of this 2-party war system. So maybe the most telling problem for Trump was the fact that the general apathy of people. I mean, seriously, do you really want to hear this guy drone on and on for 2 hours? Who wants that, right? I think maybe that's the biggest tell. The people have had enough. You hear him drone about all of his imaginary accomplishments. The only case that he made for war with Iran was basically a replay of the BB bomb BS that we've heard now for 30 years. And he did that even as in the afternoon you had Caroline Leavitt was asked, they said, Trump has said, first of all, that he completely obliterated Iran's nuclear program just a short period of time ago. And now he's saying we got to go back and have a war with Iran because they've got a nuclear war program. Here's what she had to say.
Ron, you mentioned Operation Midnight Hammer, the president touted the success of the military. One of the things that the president said after that was that Iran's nuclear sites could be obliterated. We heard from Steve Witkoff just a few days ago also saying that Iran was getting access to bomb-making material. How can you square those two statements? What exactly happened?
How do you square those two statements, they're saying?
Not as effective, or were they need to rebuild the administration?
No, the president's initial statement, and the president reiterated that statement last night on True Social, that Operation Midnight Hammer was an overwhelmingly successful mission that did, in fact, obliterate Iran's nuclear facilities. That is not just verified by the president of the United States, but also the International Atomic Energy Commission as well. That does not mean that Iran may never try again to establish a nuclear program.
But he said a week.
Directly threaten the United States and our allies abroad, and that's what the president wants to ensure can never happen again. And just one more note, but with respect to Iran, before I run into my morning meeting, President Trump's first option is always diplomacy. But as he has shown, he is willing to use the lethal force of the United States military if necessary. So it's always the president is always the final decision maker around here. And I've seen a lot of sensationalist reporting over the past day that is just completely untrue. And anyone speculating to the media, hiding behind an anonymous source, pretending to know what President Trump is thinking or a decision he will make with respect to action against Iran has no idea what they're talking about.
We don't need to hide behind anonymous sources. We can clearly see what he's doing. You have Steve Witkoff, who is the quote-unquote negotiator, goes on with Trump's daughter-in-law on Fox News, goes on with Laura Trump, and says, I don't know why the Iranians haven't capitulated. Look at all the ships we got ready to attack them. And yet they did capitulate, as I pointed out yesterday, and I've forgotten the details, didn't write them down, but basically what they were saying was, we will surrender our enhanced enrichment program of uranium, taking it up to 90%, and we will give that up, and we'll give up the that part of the program, and we'll even pause our civilian program, where we take it up to a 60% level, and we will pause that for a couple of years. That's their offer. They don't care about this. The decision, as many people said, is going to be made by Witkoff and Jared Kushner. How do we get Jared Kushner deciding to take us to war? I thought that was a function of Congress. This guy's not even elected. This is like Hillary Clinton deciding she's going to restructure our healthcare program back in the 90s. Except a lot worse than that. Anyway, the two of them are going to make this decision. And, we pretend that we've got these talks with people. And yet, when Trump has his envoys go in and talk about the Ukraine-Russian war, is Russia going to take that seriously when we're giving arms to Ukraine? We're not an independent negotiator here. And we're not an independent negotiator there in Iran either. And so we're going to talk about that coming up. But again, you have Trump who goes out and says, well, we destroyed their nuclear program. Then his chief negotiator, Witkoff, says, well, I think they're just a short period of time away from having nuclear weapons, weeks or whatever. And how does that square with what Trump said? But of course, don't worry, because Susan Levitt will lie about everything. That's what these people are. That's why they pick these spokespersons, right? No matter what happens, you can hit them with their statements, the recorded statements that are completely contradictory to each other. And it doesn't even faze them. They just brush it off. These people lie for a living. It's disgusting to watch them operate. I am so sick and tired of these lying politicians, both sides. It doesn't matter. It's not just a Republican thing. It's a Democrat thing, of course, obviously, as well. They all have these press secretaries who lie for them, even when they're caught in the lie. They don't care. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Before we do, Fuzzy Mateo says, George Costanza says, it's not a lie if you believe it. That's absolutely true. That's right. That's a good one. Stealth Patriot. The Democrats put the illegal aliens first. Republicans put Israel first. Who's representing me? Nobody. That's right. As a matter of fact, I guess you could say Thomas Massey. I used to always say this about Ron Paul. Ron Paul was not perfect. Thomas Massey is not perfect. I can have my disagreements with him, but they are the people who represent me in Congress, even if I'm not in their district. That's about as close as I can get. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the pedophile privacy. The pedophiles get privacy. Isn't that interesting? We don't get any privacy. We don't get any security, but the Machiavellian industrial complex that sends us to war over and over again, they get their security, not us. We'll be right back.
It's your move. And now, The David Knight Show.
Well, Right Overture says, how many years would we have to go back to find a president or a Congress that didn't lie to the people? Maybe George Washington at the beginning of his term? I don't know. The Congress immediately ignored the provision about limiting the number of people that would be represented by those in Congress. I mean, they immediately went against their Constitution. But of course, I think George Washington, his farewell address and other issues like that, I don't think he betrayed the principles of the Constitution. Even Thomas Jefferson with the Louisiana Purchase essentially betrayed the Constitution in many different and very important way. It was pragmatic, and it was probably worked out for the best to buy from the French government when they needed the cash to buy half of what is now continental United States. But there wasn't any congressional authority. There wasn't any constitutional authority for that, and he acknowledged that. So I don't know, but principles are principles, aren't they? And yet, when we look at this pedophile issue that is here now, protecting the pedophiles, there's as they're looking at the midterms coming up, the Republicans aren't doing anything at all in Congress to try to rehabilitate their image either. And we have the Epstein File Transparency Act, EFTA, they call it. Because of this act that was passed by Congress, because of Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, they numbered all of these pages sequentially. So the page numbers will say EFTA 1, EFTA 2, so forth and so on, sequentially. That meant that somebody noticed there's a big gap of 53 pages missing. As a matter of fact, the somebody was NPR. This is revenge best served cold, I guess. Trump cut their funding, and I'm all for cutting the funding of NPR, by the way. We should not have any government media. Well, these people are capable of doing some investigative journalism anyway. And so they did that. And they said there's 53 pages missing, and these things are in there sequentially. And there was 3 out of 4 interviews with a woman. The FBI found her credible enough to interview her 4 times. And she had accused Trump of raping her as a teen. And so 3 of those 4 interviews are gone, are part of that 53 missing pages. And so you say, well, what is that about? Because they redacted stuff as well. Why would they take those pages out completely? Well, remember that the people in Congress are able to see the unredacted documents. So this must have been something damaging indeed for the Department of Justice to pull that out. And so that is a key thing that was revealed in it. It's also kind of interesting, I think, the dog that did not bark, or I should say the dog that didn't get shot by Kristi Noem. We don't have anybody in government anywhere in the Trump administration or people like that are really seeing any kind of punishment. We have the former Prime Minister of Norway attempted suicide because of what was revealed in the Epstein stuff. He's facing criminal charges. And so I guess Donald Trump decided that rather than have to attempt suicide because of criminal charges brought against him, he would rather commit political suicide and make sure this stuff never sees the light of day. And so I guess that's where we are. As a matter of fact, a little interesting aside there, this guy who attempted suicide because he's facing criminal charges, former Prime Minister of Norway. After he was Prime Minister of Norway, he also then became the chair of the Nobel Peace Prize, which is operated out of Norway, but it's not done by the government. Note to Trump, that's not, the government doesn't do the Nobel Prize. But this was a former government official who was the head of the Nobel Peace Prize. When Obama was given the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009, this is the guy that gave it to him. Who just attempted suicide because of his connections with Jeffrey Epstein. So that's the big gotcha point by the MAGA people. That's all they want to talk about with that. But there's also another development that came out, and that was research that was done by the UK Telegraph. They're very interested in this Epstein stuff in the UK. As a matter of fact, as we pointed out, there's been big consequences in the UK for people connected to Epstein. You have Mandelson, who was U.S. ambassador to the U.S. He lost that. He had to get out of his, resign from politics, lost the ambassadorship and so forth. And the fallout from that has affected the guy that got him hired, and also affected his calls for resignation of Keir Starmer, the prime minister. And so just for having this guy who knows Jeffrey Epstein is enough for people to call for the resignation of the prime minister. Whereas here we got the president who is his best friend for 15 years and is covering up all these files as best that he can. and there's no consequences at all for him. And then take a look at the royal family. And the royal family has had allegations swirling around them for centuries about corruption and other issues. I mean, just go back even to the Jimmy Savile stuff, where he had this guy who worked for, I guess it was the BBC, had a children's program, and it came out that he was a horrific pedophile. And the BBC started doing an expose on him, and they shut that down and fired the people at the BBC. And he had a lot of connections to the royal family. And yet this is even more so with Jeffrey Epstein. So with former Prince Andrew, the man formerly known as Prince, he gets kicked out. He gets thrown out of his he gets frog marched out of Frogmore Mansion. I think it's where he was at midnight. And then later on, they arrest him on his birthday. And the photograph of his anguished face as he's coming or going from the jail, he's facing a long-term sentence if they apply this to him. And it looks like the royal family is going to be just fine with that and would probably prefer that. They want to try to distance themselves as much as they can from Andrew, because this is something that could bring down the royal family with the way the country is right now. And so that picture that went viral of him in dismay, he had some people who said, people on social media, they put up a viral picture of them framing that picture and hanging it in the Louvre. They said, people said, you ought to put that in the Louvre, in some of the comments. Said, so we did. And then they took a video of themselves putting it on the wall in the Louvre and put that on social media. This is what's happening in other countries. The dog that didn't bark is here in America. And I think it's going to bark. I think this is going to be very damaging for Trump in the long term. People care about this. This is, as Thomas Massey said, this is bigger than Watergate because it has international consequences in the UK and Norway, many other places like that. Everybody is paying attention to this. And it is something that is dear to the heart of people. Nobody likes to see children abused, right? And so you have people who are pedophiles frequently are killed in prison. Not that I believe that Jeffrey Epstein was killed, but could have been, but not because of those reasons. But typically, pedophiles don't do too well in prison. Even fellow prisoners despise them. And so this is something that really people have a visceral reaction to this kind of stuff and the kind of pictures that are coming out. And so the other aspect of this that came out was that the Telegraph did some research, and they found that Epstein had storage sheds, a lot of them, in places not too far from where he lived. And he actually paid a private detective agency to grab a lot of his documents and photos and videos and things like that and selectively remove stuff that would be damning when investigators came to his home and searched. And so there's records of him paying them, records of him paying the storage shed places. And I mean, they were not cheap. I looked at it. It's like, $300 a month or $350 a month, just one of them. And so he got these PIs, two of them that it's a partnership that they had, and both of them are former cops. And he hired them to take evidence and hide it. And he also hired them to find dirt on people that he had abused that could possibly testify against him, to blackmail them. Great job, former cops. So anyway, that was found by the UK Telegraph, and of course they pointed out that if you don't pay those big fees on a regular basis, what happens with storage sheds? Well, they have an auction and they get rid of all this stuff. So it's been 6 years, I guess, since anybody paid these fees. I would imagine it's been auctioned off. Oh, imagine the surprise when somebody opens up some of these boxes. Except I don't think that's what happened. I think there's people who knew what was going on. I mean, if nothing else, it was private investigators, maybe even the FBI. because the FBI, as I've said before, if you want to know what it really stands for, it's the feds who are blocking investigations that could be damaging to politicians. That's the real role of the FBI. Under J. Edgar Hoover, it was there to block investigations of his friends. It was there to blackmail his enemies. And you had multiple presidents, Democrat and Republican. You had both Nixon as well as Truman talking about how J. Edgar Hoover had dirt on everybody and was blackmailing everybody. And so it could have been the FBI, could have got this stuff and put it somewhere else. Could have been an individual within the FBI. Or it also could have been these crooked private investigators. And I call them crooked because if you're going to let somebody pay you to hide evidence, and then if you're going to go get stuff on victims, that's what the emails show. I don't know. That's I would call that crooked. What about you? That's crooked in my book. But these guys, when you look at what they found in the Telegraph, a lot of people, oh, well, we're going to find a lot more evidence. I don't think you're going to find anything. I think it's probably somebody who was on the inside of the Epstein organization, probably got it. Maybe they destroyed it. Maybe they put it somewhere else. Maybe they kept it for quote unquote protection against other people. But I don't think you're going to find it in the storage sheds at this point. And so the pedophiles are getting their privacy, and Trump is making sure he may not care much about your privacy. He likes a surveillance state. He wants to have digital ID. He wants to have digital currency. He wants to use AI to scope out everything about you, but they're not going to do any of that stuff. Wouldn't it be interesting if they were to turn the Epstein files over to an AI program to sort through this stuff, collate it, and because that's one thing that AI is really good at. That's what they're going to use it against us for. They're going to use it to micromanage and audits of their enemies, but they're not going to use it to look at the Epstein data. So again, the Telegraph looked at credit card receipts. They did a little bit of detective work themselves. I don't know if they hired ex-cops or not, but they did some detective work. They said shows regular storage payments continued until 2019, the year of his death. Search warrants reviewed by the Telegraph suggest U.S. authorities never raided the lockers, raising the possibility that they may contain unseen evidence relating to Epstein and his associates, including Andrew, formerly known as Prince, and Lord Mandelson, and because this is coming out of the UK, so that's what they're concerned about. But they mention at the very end, they auction these things off and people don't pay them, so that's going to be the end of that, essentially. The missing papers, however, there's quite a story behind that. When you look at it, as I said, this is all a story about that a woman told, saying that she was raped by Trump as a teenager, and the FBI took it seriously enough to do 4 interviews with her. And the transcripts from 3 of those 4 interviews, when she was 13 or 14 years old, I think that counts as a minor, even for people like Alan Dershowitz and Megyn Kelly. Don't you? The DOJ appears to have illegally withheld FBI interviews from the survivor who accused Trump of heinous crimes, said a Democrat politician. Well, I guess we can just dismiss that because the Democrat said it. No, it's true. It's true. So the as NPR did an investigation, they found dozens of pages, actually 53 to be precise, that appear to be cataloged by the Justice Department but not shared publicly. And that's how they know it, is because they all have a consecutive number. The Epstein File Transparency Act, EFTA 1, EFTA 2, EFTA 3, that type of thing. And then afterwards, somebody pulled all these things. So Garcia is the Democrat who is on the House Oversight Committee. He's the ranking member. And he's been looking at these files as they don't allow them to take anything with them that's electronic. They can't take pictures. They can't read it into a device, and they can't have any staff. No staff can see it. But they have 4 computers set up to look at millions of pages. He said, yesterday I reviewed unredacted evidence logs of the Department of Justice. Oversight Democrats can confirm that the DOJ appears to have illegally withheld FBI interviews with the survivor who accused Trump of heinous crimes. And so some of the documents that they pointed out were briefly taken down but put back online, while others remain hidden. And these pages remain hidden. Again, the FBI interviewed the Trump and Epstein accuser 4 times, according to an FBI serial report and a list of non-testifying witness materials in the Maxwell case that were also released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Of 15 documents listed in the log of the Maxwell discovery material for this first accuser, only 7 are in the Epstein Files database. Those missing include notes that accompany 3 of the 4 interviews. So she was concerned. Oh, this is the other aspect of it. The woman discussed ways that Epstein abused her as a girl, and in identifying him to investigators, she showed a cropped photo of Epstein. Her attorney said it was cropped because she was, quote, concerned about implicating additional individuals, and specifically any that were well known, due to fear of retaliation. The FBI agents noted that it was a, quote, widely distributed photograph of Epstein with Trump. So looks like maybe Trump was the well-known individual that she feared retaliation from. And again, part of her testimony was that she was raped by him. Second woman detailed how Epstein and Maxwell's abuse began while she was around 13 years old, attending the Interlochen Center for the Arts, and described how at one point Epstein took her to Trump's Mar-a-Lago club to meet him. Epstein told Trump, "This is a good one, huh?" In a 2020 lawsuit against Epstein's estate, Maxwell, the second woman, added that both men chuckled and she felt uncomfortable. By the time, she said, "I was too young to really understand why." And so that was the first interview of 6 that the FBI conducted. That interview was removed from the DOJ's public files sometime after initial publication on January 30th. And it was republished February the 19th, according to document metadata. Multiple FBI interviews with other people refer to the second woman meeting with Trump while she was a minor and being abused by Epstein. In one interview, they talked her mother. They interviewed her mother, and the mother recalled hearing. She said, "Well, I heard that there's a prince, and that Donald Trump visited Epstein's house." She said, "It made me think, if those guys are there, how could Epstein be a criminal?" Isn't that amazing? So she thought, well, okay, it's okay to go to Jeffrey Epstein's house because he has visitors like Prince Andrew and Donald Trump. That's kind of the reverse thinking, isn't it? It's tragic that, but that's the kind of thinking that MAGA still has, right? And how could this be wrong? I mean, you got a prince who's going there as well. Anyway, Robert Glassman, who represents a woman who testified against Maxwell, sharply criticized the Department of Justice's handling of the Epstein files. He said the whole thing is ridiculous. They were ordered to release information to the public to be transparent about Epstein. However, they released the names of the courageous victims who have fought hard for decades to remain anonymous and out of the limelight. Whether the disclosures were inadvertent or not, they had one job to do, and they didn't do it. And that job was release the information, don't try to protect anybody but the victims. So what they did was they exposed the victims and they protected everybody else. The Pedophile Privacy Act is what the Department of Justice saw it as. So far there has been no explanation from the Department of Justice for the 53 missing Trump pages. So they refuse to comment on that yet. They're still trying to think of a plausible lie, I guess. So this is where these people are, and it truly is amazing. As I said, you see people in all these other countries are having consequences. It makes you wonder, are we really the great Satan that Iran says we are? I think we probably are. This satanic government in Washington, the District of Criminals. And, Trump and the GOP are not, folks, anti-Washington. They're anti-George. They're antithesis of George Washington. They are not against the corruption that is there rampant in Washington. A good example of this is it's not just the Epstein stuff, but they've also now got another minor sex scandal on their hands in the GOP. They've got a representative, Gonzalez, who's about to come up for the primaries in Texas. And it came out that he was sending sex texts, he was sexting somebody who worked for him, a woman who worked for him, pushing her to send him pictures of herself of an intimate nature. And I looked at that and immediately thought of the 2006 paging scandal. Republican Mark Foley out of Texas, and how he was doing the same thing with young teen boys who were working in Congress as pages. Now, what happened with this guy, Gonzalez, is that she got divorced by her. This was made public, and I think her husband divorced her, and he rejected her because Gonzalez is already married and so forth, and so he jolted her or whatever. She wound up committing suicide by setting herself on fire. And a lot of this stuff is just broken. Her husband then went back and got some people to help him, some detectives to help him. They forensically looked at the phone, and that exposed these horrific emails and texts that this guy was sending her. Now, all this stuff is broken. So what does the Republican Party do about it? Do they say, this guy needs to leave? No. As a matter of fact, Thomas Massey and a few women say that. But Speaker of the House wants to keep him there, right? Because he wants his numbers. He doesn't care what happens with all this stuff. And when I look at this and the similarity, really, to the Mark Foley GOP paging scandal of 2006, I'll never forget that Dennis Hastert, who was a pedophile wrestling coach in high school, picked by the Republican Party to run for Congress because he's blackmailable, right? And then he became the Speaker of the House, longest serving Republican Speaker of the House ever. Dennis Hastert, the pedophile speaker, went on with Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh hardly ever did interviews. He went on with Rush Limbaugh to just dismiss all this paging scandal as it's nothing but partisan politics. It's just a hoax, right? These people never change. When are we going to learn? They never change. They do the same play over and over again because it works. Didn't actually really work too well for them in those midterms. I don't think it's going to work too well for them again, but that's what they are wired to do, right? It's in their nature to lie. It's in their nature to cover up for pedophiles. And that's what they did. I guarantee you that if Rush Limbaugh was alive today, he would be telling people to move on from the Epstein file. It's not important. You got to look at the bigger picture here, just like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and many other people are doing right now. I guarantee you Rush would be pushing that. Just move on. But he's not alive, and people are not going to move on from this stuff. I think what they're going to do is they're going to move on from the people who are guarding our pedophiles, the GOP. And so, one other thing, too, almost forgot. Mark Foley, the guy who was caught sexting these teen boys who were pages in Congress. Guess what he was? He was the co-chair of the House caucus on missing and exploited children. How about that? People always put themselves in that kind of a position. Just like Richard Levine, the guy who called himself Rachel, that was the number 2 at HHS under Biden. He was a child psychologist. Yeah, it gives them an opportunity, doesn't it? And so when you look at the people who are pushing back against it, you got Thomas Massey, you got Tim Burchett here in Tennessee, said Gonzalez should do the right thing and resign. You have some women, Nancy Mace, Anna Paulina Luna, and Lauren Boebert are saying that. Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene would be. I think she has said that on social media, but she's not in Congress anymore. And so text messages reportedly show that the congressman made explicit sexual requests of his late congressional staffer who repeatedly resisted. That was the other thing. It's like, you need to go to bed. I think you've been drinking tonight, that type of thing. Pushing him back. And then this whole thing blew up on her. She wound up setting herself on fire and committing suicide. Tragic. Mike Johnson, when pressed about the allegations, however, remarked that, well, they're very serious, but he would not withdraw his endorsement. His endorsement. He said Gonzalez has to address the matter with his constituents. And of course, Trump has not commented on the allegation either. They also got Jim Jordan and they pressed him on it. Very despicable how he reacted. This was laid out for him, for Jim Jordan, by a reporter, and who said there was this affair allegedly with a former staffer. She later killed herself, and now there are text messages that have been revealed that suggest that he was acting very improperly. Some of your fellow Republicans want him to resign over this. Should he resign? This was asked of Jim Jordan. What did Jim Jordan say? He said, well, should he resign? Well, I leave that up to the voters in San Antonio and South Texas in his district. That's the call for the voters. I've always sort of taken the position. In the end, it is we, the people, who decide who represents us. There's an election in 7 days. This is how utterly devoid of any principle or morality the leaders of the Republican Party are. And of course, the Democrats are the same way. They would never say to Bill Clinton, you should resign. Never. They defended him to the end and would still do so. And so then the reporter replies and says, are you supporting him for re-election? Jordan said, well, we were. But there's also this guy who now some of our colleagues are supporting, Mr. Herrera. If Mr. Herrera wins, that's fine. Are you going to support Herrera instead of the voters? No, I mean, look, we're for the voters deciding. And then the reporter says, so you're neutral. Well, I've done events for Tony in the past, Tony Gonzalez, certainly to help maintain our majority. That's the only thing that matters to them. Power, position. Forget about principles. Forget about morality. You don't want to distance your club. You don't want to kick somebody like this out of your club. I mean, even Trump claimed that he kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, which basically he did. He wasn't a member, but he was allowed to still visit there, right? According to the latest set of documents. But you know, don't you even want to try to distance yourself from this guy? No, they don't care. It's simply about the numbers for them. That's where the GOP is. It's where they, all of these political parties have always been. It truly is disgusting. Well, we got a couple of comments here. DG8, thank you very much for the tip. He said, David, what you witnessed last night was 100% staged. Nancy Pelosi wearing a release, the Epstein files. I can assure you she has as much interest in releasing those as Trump does. Never forget also Lutnick. Yeah, I saw clips of Lutnick out there laughing and shaking hands and all the rest of the stuff. Has been to the island, and Bondi was Attorney General of Florida and covered for Epstein, and the money behind his VP, Peter Thiel, is all over the files, along with Acosta and Scott Bessent. Yeah, it is disgusting. It is disgusting. I don't know. I guess was Nancy Pelosi wearing a T-shirt, release the Epstein files? I don't know. I honestly, like I said, I did not watch it. I typically don't have time to watch videos. I usually go for transcripts, and because I can read them faster than I can watch the video. If I speed it up, a lot of people watch videos and things like that sped up, but I usually can't. I miss things because they're going by too quickly. I maybe can't understand what they're saying. I can skim read faster than that. And I did not, I could not take 2 hours of Trump droning on and on, lying about what he's accomplished and everything. He's even talking about, oh, the Dow's at 50,000 points. It's like, yeah, I guess that excuses everything, right? Should somebody tap him on the shoulder and tell him that most of us in America don't own any stocks? I don't care personally about what's going on with the Dow at 50,000. Yeah, I understand it is an economic metric of, we're told over and over again how important this is. It's important to the people who've got millions of dollars invested in it. I don't have a single penny in the stock market, and most Americans don't. So what we gauge the economy off of is the price of food that he's made more expensive, the cost of taxes and insurance and things like that. That's what we look at. And I don't see any good news in those economic areas. Chilier, no justice for the vax injured after 5 years of fake grifting lawsuits. Even after the courts ruled, Pfizer did just what the DOD contract with them said. That's right. let's not forget that Trump was at the epicenter of all of that. And that was the thing that I said from the very beginning. That was the when he crossed the Rubicon once and for all. I mean, prior to what happened with the pandemic, Trump was yet another politician who says one thing and does another and doesn't really pay attention to his promises, his big promises like, I'm going to fix this Obamacare mess. He had a great plan that somebody wrote, and then they deleted it immediately off of his website as soon as he was elected. But it was a great market-based reform, much needed, of the healthcare industry. Never was spoken of again after the campaign. And of course, all the nonsense about immigration and building the wall, and I didn't think that was going to be the right approach to take with it, but he didn't do anything about immigration, not in his first term either. And so you look at that and you say, okay, it's just another politician who says one thing, does the other, and doesn't keep his promises. But what happened in 2020, folks, that was crossing the Rubicon. That was one of the most tyrannical, authoritarian things I've ever witnessed any president doing. It was absolutely inexcusable. I could never support a criminal like that. And the stuff that he did with Epstein as well, now that that's coming out, everybody should have known about that at that point in time. So all these things, and yet, people still don't get it with what happened with the pandemic MacGuffin. They don't see that it was a long-term plan. And because they don't see that it was a long-term plan, they don't see Trump as being the face of the deep state rather than the nemesis of the deep state. He was the fixer guy for the globalist agenda, pushing things like universal basic income, moving the Overton window, using the stimulus checks and other things like that while locking people down. It was just insane what happened with that. And yeah, there hasn't been anything done about that at all. I've got a short list here of people that have contributed the last couple of days, and I want to thank them. We're getting close to the end of the month here. And on Zelle, we've had contribution. I'm sorry, this is not, this is Zelle. Alex C., Daniel C., Sally D., Lois I., and Matthew M. Thank you very much for your contributions on Zelle. And in terms of Cash App, I have that on here too, I think. But I can't find it for some reason. There we go. Whoops, not there. So somehow I got the files messed up when I sent it up. But thank you so much. And we have 2 or 3 people contributed on Cash App as well. If you would like to support the show, you can go to davidknight.news. You can see the gas gauge as to where we are right now. We're at about 5/8. And you got, there's links there where you can find the program. We always make the program free for people. We don't put it behind a paywall. The support is voluntary, and there are places there where you can support. We have links to where you can support us on Cash App and Zelle. Subscribe Star is a very important one for us, as well as an address if you want to send a check as well. So we have all that information there at davidknight.news. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
APS Radio delivers multiple channels of music right to your mobile device. Get the APS Radio app today and listen wherever you go.
Is actually running ads on Fox News selling $100,000 watches. I haven't seen these ads. I'm just wondering if he comes out and opens up his his coat, and he's got watches there, like some guy that's hitting you up in Times Square or something. Times Square. Yeah, there you go. Time X. He's launched a luxury watch website where you can purchase a limited edition 18 karat gold design for only $100,000. This guy is such a huckster. It's amazing. He's got his King James Bibles that he put out that he charged some exorbitant amount for. And again, there's a lot of these translations that the companies that publish them have them copyrighted, but not King James. So he got the text for free, and he puts it out there and sells it for a tremendous amount of money. He's doing the same thing with watches. I guess these things keep really good time for $100,000. That's one of the things I've never gotten is, why people would spend so much money for a watch. I don't even wear a watch. I don't like watches and rings on my hands, but I guess it goes back to the days when I was working with electronics. It's just another thing to electrocute you, or short something out. Anyway, there's clocks everywhere in modern society. You got them pretty much on every device you got. What do you need a watch for? You got them in the cars. You got them on the walls everywhere. But I guess if you got to have exact split timing. When you're giving a speech and somebody's going to pretend to take a shot at you, you got to know exactly when to take a duck. And I guess that's the way he ought to do it, because he's calling it the fight watch. So is that how he's going to sell it? Is that the angle? This thing can precisely time your ducks when you're doing some kind of a WWE wrestling thing. You got to know exactly the split second of when to take a dive. This is the thing that you need to have, this $100,000 watch that's out there. Well, they're getting ready to do a dive on us in terms of the UFO stuff, I think. There's so much talk about it. It's just casually thrown out there by Obama. Got everybody talking, and the Trump people really jumped on it. They're excited about it. It's going to be probably the diversion that they've got coming up. We've got Pete Hegseth is talking about it. You had Laura Trump talking about it.
3 days ago, President Trump directed you to begin the process of identifying and releasing the UFO and UAP files. Did you ever think that you would be the Secretary of War in charge of potentially declassifying extraterrestrial life, the American people?
I did not. I did not have that on my bingo card at all.
You thought he was just going to kill people.
Of course. We've got our people working on it right now. I don't want to oversell how much time it will take. Right? We're digging in. We're going to be in full compliance with that executive order, eager to provide that for the president. So there'll be more coming on that as far as the process of what we'll do.
And what sort of time frame? Do you have any sense for how long this is going to take?
I don't have a time frame for you yet, but stand by. We'll get it for you.
And do you think aliens are what's happening?
What?
Do you think aliens exist?
We'll see. I get to do the review and find out along with you.
Yeah, we're going to find out what it is. As a matter of fact, Laura Trump has said that the president has got his letter already written and just waiting for the right time to do it. The right time to do it might be when those interviews with the girl who said she was raped as a teen by Trump, that might be the right time for us to release the UFO files. Look, a lot of people are saying, yeah, they're real, but it's not what they're trying to say, and so the secular take on it is that they are not interplanetary, but interdimensional. Well, that's kind of part of it. Christians have a different point of view about this, and I'm not the only one who thinks. This is not a Christian doctrine anywhere. It's not in anybody's creed or confession. But most people have looked at this and said, yeah, there is. And a lot of people, several Christians who have looked at the testimonies of people who say they've been abducted and everything, really believe there's some kind of occultic thing that's going on here. So, yeah, you want to call that interdimensional? I'd call it spiritual, but I think it's going to be used as yet another distraction because that's what they excel at. And so, this is on our bingo card and has been for a long time. It's decades ago. I was telling my sons that. I said, it's going to happen in your lifetime. It might even happen in my lifetime, as short as that may be. Who knows? But it is something that I think they're reserving that card to put that out there. Let's talk a little bit about Iran, because we're going to talk about this when Gerald Slinty joins us. Trump's decision as to whether or not to strike Iran will be guided by Kushner and Witkoff's advice. Well, why don't you just say it's going to be guided by Israel to determine what's in their best interest, not in our best interest. And so this is now being put out by the Trump administration. Trump's decision to order airstrikes against Iran will hinge in part on the judgment of Trump's special envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, about whether Tehran is stalling over a deal to relinquish its capability to produce nuclear weapons, according to people familiar with the matter. And yet, if you are the negotiator, why do you go on Sunday with Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, and say, well, they're not capitulating. And even though we've got all these military assets that are waiting off the coast, they don't seem to realize that. And so the talks are going to be held by Witkoff and Kushner, whose assessment will shape Trump's calculus about all this stuff. And yet, there's a lot of political maneuvering that's going on with this. Marco Rubio, always a war hawk, always a Zionist as well. Marco Rubio is kind of putting out that he's sitting on the fence. Well, I'm not either for or against this. J.D. Vance is basically doing the same thing. Both of them have future political aspirations. And the assessment from, as I said yesterday, Dan Kane, who is the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his assessment, and he's been public with it, and of course, J.D. Vance, people evidently leaked this and leaked that J.D. Vance wanted this assessment from him. Again, they're trying to do damage control in advance, I think. His assessment was that we're pretty low on allies and ammunition. He said, we pretty much alienated people there. When you look at what Huckabee's done, when you look at the statements from Israel about all the different people that they're going to attack at the very beginning of this, and Huckabee saying, yeah, all the Middle East really belongs to Israel. God gave it to them. So when you look at that, there's been a huge pushback against a lot of the Arab states that would have typically been allies of the U.S. that have historically in the past been allies, because it's not monolithic. They've got their own rivalries, political and religious and economic. And then you got Dan Kane, who is saying, we have used a lot of our ammunition supplies in terms of supporting Ukraine and Israel already. Vance is far less confident about the likelihood of success in attacking Iran than he was about the operation to capture the Venezuelan President Maduro. These are not even in the same universe. You're going to go in and kidnap a guy, or you're going to take a gigantic country, which Iran is, a very large country. You're going to take that over, and you're going to basically do nation building there. Those are very, very different. So this is being framed to make Vance look good, and leaked by people that are in his circle of influence. Dan Kane, the general, who is the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his concern is centered on the low stockpile of anti-missile systems. After Trump bombed Iran's nuclear enrichment sites last year, the U.S. fired 30 Patriot missiles to intercept Iranian counterattacks, the largest single use of these missiles in U.S. history. Those counterattacks, and we don't even want to put a price tag on it, right? Who cares? Those counterattacks were limited in scope, but this time, Iran has vowed to retaliate as hard as possible in response to any U.S. attack. They warned last week that they had the ability to also sink a warship with Chinese supersonic missiles. Now, these missiles have not been tested in battle, but they're calling them supersonic. I don't know if they are like the hypersonic missiles for which there's no defense, but these things, nevertheless, are supersonic, and they do a zigzagging pattern before they strike. So they are a huge challenge. The Chinese, not the Chinese, but the Iranian spokesperson tweeted out, said a warship is a dangerous piece of military hardware. However, more dangerous than the warship is the weapon that can send the warship to the bottom of the sea. Dan Kane has come across as more vocal about his concerns inside the Pentagon than when he briefed Trump, and what officials have privately speculated as an effort to not appear to be advocating for a particular course of action, a person familiar with the matter said. So Trump has said, yeah, he's put out some concerns about this, but if I say go, he's going to be leading the charge. He's in there completely with us. And so this is being put out. But again, Marco Rubio, I'm not saying yes or no. And then you got J.D. Vance says, well, look at what Dan Kane is saying. He's trying to present both sides as well, the case for and the case against as well. But the reality, here again, China to send Iran aircraft carrier killing missiles. This is the CM-302 cruise weapon. And so, according to Reuters, Iran is in advanced negotiations with Beijing to purchase this, and they've been in negotiations to get this weapon since they were attacked by the U.S. in Operation, was it Warhammer, something like that, which supposedly took out all the nuclear weapons, but now we got to go destroy their nuclear program again. At the same time, you got Witkoff in this interview, and Trump is doing the same thing in the State of the Union speech, basically boasting about how effective Operation Warhammer was in terms of taking out their nuclear stuff, and then immediately turning around and saying, well, we got to go back and finish the job. So then you either took it out or you didn't take it out, or you're lying both times. They can travel at about 4 times the speed of sound. They carry a 1/4 ton of explosives. They can conduct zigzagging evasive maneuvers in the final phase of flight to confuse ships' defenses. I think War Pete would call this lethality. He's always boasting about. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is currently stationed in the Arabian Sea south of Iran. A second carrier group, USS Gerald Ford, is approaching the region and was photographed in Crete. There's also photographs that have come out about the Gerald Ford, and they're having some kind of a septic issue with it on the aircraft carrier. And there were pictures of brown water sloshing down the aisles and stuff like that. Remember when we were on that Chinese train? It made me think of that. I told that to Karen Travis, and she said, don't even mention that. That was the most disgusting thing. They had toilets that were overflowing and leaking down the hallway of the train. People talk about China having a great train system. They did have a great train system between Guangzhou and Hong Kong, two large modern cities, but you go into the interior of China, no, that thing, that was an unbelievable mess. The solution they had was to put down some wood slats that you could walk on that were just slightly higher than the sloshing sewer water that was down the hallway. But I look at this on an aircraft carrier. It's I guess you could say the Gerald Ford has got dysentery. I don't know. That's been the downfall of many an army in the past. I don't know if it's going to work that way with the aircraft carrier. And again, you see a couple of pictures. I don't know how widespread that is, but there was talk about that being fairly widespread on the carrier. The U.S. is amassing the largest concentration of sea and air power in the Middle East since the Second Gulf War, as Trump threatens Tehran in an effort to enforce restrictions on nuclear and ballistic missile programs. The loss of even a single ship would be a historic humiliation for the U.S., politically disastrous for Trump, writes the Telegraph. And it would be. That's one of the reasons why Vance is hedging his bets and why Rubio is doing this. If Trump does this for Israel, he's putting his presidency on the line in a big way. And let me just say that if he loses a lot of political capital and people want to distance themselves from him, you're going to see all of that protective bubble around him in terms of this Epstein stuff collapse as well. If you have a carrier that goes to the bottom of the sea with all the people on board, you're going to have, he's going to lose all this political cover for the Epstein thing. I don't want to see that happen, even though I'd like to see him lose his political cover. This cruise missile that China has is the export variant of their supersonic anti-ship cruise missiles designed for that. They approach the target just right above the waves, right above the surface of the water. Very difficult to shoot down. They have a range of about 180 miles. Reuters reported that as talks to buy the missiles entered their final phase last summer, Iran sent a team of senior military and government officials to China. China has always opposed the West's actions in Iran. In the 1980s, they were very actively arming Iran. There was a lot of international pressure in the 90s, and so they stopped doing that, but they're now doing it again. As a matter of fact, it's not just China, but it's also Russia. Iran and Russia have also conducted joint naval exercises on Thursday in the Gulf of Oman and the northern Indian Ocean. Iran conducted live-fire drills in the Strait of Hormuz last week, temporarily shutting down the oil going through that waterway, which is about 20% of global oil production passes. When you stop and think about the cost of this, I mean, the cost in terms of, missile costs, in terms of lives lost and all the rest of the stuff is huge. But there's also going to be a tremendous disruption in what happens to oil. Because they're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz if there's a war there. That's going to have massive global consequences. So we'll see what happens with that. I want to get Joe Salente's take on this when he joins us. Again, the significant risks that are being warned about by General Dan Kane, according to the Wall Street Journal. This is being reported, by the way, widely reported by mainstream media. Wall Street Journal, Reuters, New York Times, Axios, all of them have a lot of articles about what Dan Kane is saying. There's a lot of people trying to distance themselves from this war that they see coming. By the way, not Lindsey Graham, though. He's jumping in with both feet. It truly is amazing to see Lindsey Graham. Never changes. This guy is always consistently wrong. General Dan Kane said Trump, like all of us, would like to not see a war, but if a decision is made, its opinion, it'll be not something that's easily won, but we know that he will be leading the pack, said Trump. And so then we have Lindsey Graham was asked about this, and he lamented over the weekend that some of Trump's advisors were warning him of risks. We don't want any advisors warning us of risks. Don't want any downside of any of that. He says, I understand concerns about major military operations in the Middle East, given past entanglements. However, the voices who counsel against getting entangled, like George Washington, seem to ignore the consequences of letting evil go unchecked. Well, it's John Quincy Adams who said, we don't go abroad seeking monsters to destroy, right? Anyway, Graham said from Axios report said that Graham has told the president that he should ignore his advisors who are urging caution. Throw caution to the wind, right? He said any attack on Iran could lead to U.S. casualties, but other people being killed is worth it, right? Basically, it's what he's saying. He said the risk of Americans being killed was worth it. Is just like Mad Woman Albright, who when she was, they asked her, these sanctions that you did against Iraq estimated cost 500,000 children's lives dying of starvation. She said it was worth it. And so that's the key issue here. Whatever happens, Lindsey thinks it's worth it because he's part of the Machiavellian industrial complex. Well, we got Joe Salente ready to come on with us. So we're going to take a quick break, folks, and we will be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Welcome back, folks. And joining us now is Gerald Celente, and it's Wednesday and the day that a new Trends Journal is released, and we got the cover of it. See if you can pull that up, Travis. It says, whether you love tariffs or hate tariffs, that's not the question. Sometimes you need a dictator, says Trump, and I can do anything I want. And that is the issue. That is the issue, folks. As with so many things with Donald Trump, it's not so much what he does, but it's the way that he does it that is disastrous and dangerous as well. Thank you for joining us, Gerald. And of course, folks, if you want to get the Trends Journal, again, released every week on Wednesday, great source of information. We're going to talk about some of the featured articles on here today. You can get 10% off if you use the code NIGHT at trendsjournal.com. Thank you for joining us, Gerald. You were spot on with that coverage, spot on with that.
Yeah, it's his quotes. That we're not making it up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a dictator. I can do anything I want. I mean, what? Who the hell are you to say this crap?
Yeah.
Who the hell are you? Hey, President.
Yeah.
My daddy left half a billion dollars worth of real estate. All right, I'm a little spoiled daddy's boy. Again, that's a fact. His brother Robert, who I had lunch with back in 2017, he told me when the father died back in 2002, left over $500 million worth of real estate to the family. That was back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Now, how much is that real estate worth? There's nothing more than a sport. Who the hell is he to say sometimes you need a dictator? I could do whatever I want. How about we the people? Screw you. What do you mean we the people?
And he's one of the most corrupt presidents I've ever seen. In front of everybody, he's out there enriching himself using his connections. Of course, he claims it's his family, just like Lutnick claims it's his family that's out there doing this stuff. But the amount of money that he's made in crypto as he's manipulating things is he's essentially getting paid for his influence. And he's not even trying to hide it, except to say that it's Don Jr. and Eric who are doing it. You know, when I talked about this the other day about Trump losing his tariff authority, I said, he immediately illustrated why this should not be done by one individual, why it's in the Constitution that you don't have one individual setting these things up. Because immediately he says, all right, that's it, 10% on everybody in the world. And within 24 hours, he's jumped it up to 15%. Yep. All this stuff about Trump always chickens out, the taco stuff, that's not true. He's not chickening out. But he's always changing his orders. That's really what TACO stands for. Trump always changing orders. And it's that chaos that has been so destructive to the economy and to individual companies. Nobody can make a plan because he's constantly changing the rates. You never know what he's going to do. Did he have a bad night last night? Is there somebody in another country that he's angry at? He's going to jack up the tariffs.
Going back to the family, this is one of the articles in this week's Trends Journal. And by the way, if you put in night, it costs the grand total of $2.50 a week, pennies a day. And the magazine's about 185 pages this week. You read what you want. Geopolitics, socioeconomics, high-tech science, AI. It's a magazine. Anyway, and it's in different languages, and you could read it online, print it out as a PDF. But anyway, Eric Trump backs, quote, low cost per kill, end quote, Israel drone makers merger with small Florida construction company in hopes of making taking the company public.
Yeah, that's right.
All right?
Yeah. Kill for profit.
Yep.
The Machiavellian industrial complex.
This Trump's son takes victory lap at World Liberty Financial Conference at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, they're not about world liberty. That digital currency, as you pointed out back in 2020, he said, from dirty cash to digital trash, so that's all about surveillance and control. It's not about global liberty. It's about global tyranny and surveillance and controlling when people can spend money and when they can't, what they can spend money on and what they can't spend money on, and where they can spend money, where they can't.
Look at all the money they're making on this. Billions of dollars they're making already.
That's right.
Billions on all the different deals that they're doing. Oh, and now it's where they're going to build another $1 billion Trump Tower. I forgot what country.
Australia. Yeah, it's Australia. Yeah.
That
Going to
was
be
Australia,
the
yeah.
tallest building in Australia. Yeah, what he is doing is, at any other time, he would be impeached for this kind of corruption, but they're just letting him do whatever he wishes.
Well, again, talking about letting him do whatever he wishes and what's going on with Iran, as you were talking about, an article in this week's Trends Journal about that issue, about how, let's see, Trump puts U.S. on the precipice of war with Iran, hardly a peep of resistance
That's right.
in Congress or mainstream media.
That's right. Yeah, the only resistance that I've seen put up against it is Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna again.
That's it.
Pushing this thing, and they've tried to do this before, but they don't have the votes. Not even with the Democrats and Republicans, because again, it is this is something that Israel wants, and so they're not going to go against that.
Well, that's another article. Khanna and Massey say they'll force a vote on war powers resolution amid risk of war with Iran. But then again, we go on to show that they're not going to get the votes, and even if they get it, Trump is going to veto it.
Yeah,
and they're not going to get a 2/3 vote to override the veto.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's sad, and we're just sleepwalking into this thing. One of the things I think is interesting is that you've got people like Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance are trying to distance themselves from this because the military is telling them, hey, this is not going to be anything at all like what happened in Venezuela. And of course, it isn't. I mean, that we're not trying to do nation building there yet, and they just went in and kidnapped a guy. This is completely different, and the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is talking about the fact that we're low on allies and low on ammo. And China is stocking them up with anti-ship missiles and that are supersonic and designed to travel just over the surface of the water and that type of thing. So this is going to be something could be very, very expensive, politically damaging a lot to Trump. People aren't paying attention to it now. If you lose one of these aircraft carriers, people are going to pay a lot of attention to it then.
Yes and no, because here's what happens. All of a sudden, there'll be an attack against the United States and we have to go to full war against Iran. They'll do something, a false flag event. Oh, let's go back again to the facts. We've talked about this a dozen times. Anybody could Google it up. On July 26, 1941, President Franklin Roosevelt seizes all Japanese assets in America. Why? Because those dirty Japanese invaded French Indochina. Wait a minute, French Indochina? You mean France that invaded about 26 countries during that time? And you got the nerve to call Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia French Indochina? And what the hell do I care? I'm an American.
Exactly.
And then the UK and the Dutch East Indies, what the hell are the Dutch doing in Indonesia? Shut the hell up, all right? We're doing the same thing the British are, where the sun never sets on the British Empire, stealing, ravaging, and pillaging. Okay. Those three countries cut off 3/4, you could Google it up, History Today, 3/4 of Japanese trade, 88% of their imported oil, they only import 100%, and stole their money. I can't understand why they bombed Pearl Harbor back a couple of months later.
That's right.
What I'm saying is they're going to do something. They'll blame Iran after they attack Iran for attacking the United States, and the people will swallow it just like they did in World War II, just like they did in World War I. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy, a Yankee Doodle do or die. All right?
That's right.
How about the .com bust, again, which we had forecast in the Trends Journal back when it was a quarterly, now it's a weekly. In September of 1999, we said it would bust by the second quarter of 2000, which it did in March. What happened? Oh, NASDAQ was down 80%. And what happened? 9/11.
Yeah.
Yep. Everybody forgot about it. So when you're talking about go to war against Iran and how the people will be opposed to it. Now, there'll be a false flag event that the people will support a full-fledged war.
I agree.
They do it all the time.
I agree. As a matter of fact, I had a clip, and I messed it up. So I couldn't put it in the deck the other day. But I a clip that I came across a couple of years ago. A guy's talking to one of these meetings that they have, one of these globalist meetings, like the Council on Foreign Relations or something. And he's recounting all this stuff. He goes, yeah, we had the Gulf of Tonkin event, and we had Fort Sumter, we had Pearl Harbor, we had Remember the Maine. He starts going down all these different things. He goes,
Yep.
So it'd be really helpful if Iran were to attack us first. And the people kind of halfway laughed and then applauded. And that's exactly, I think, what they're going to do. I talked about this the other day, talked about it on Monday, Gerald, when we had all this stuff that's happening in Mexico. And I said, if they wanted to do a false flag event, they could do something and either, step aside and let the cartels do something, or they could do something themselves, of course, and blame it on the cartels and say the cartels were allied with Iran. And then it's on, right? We got wars everywhere. It's a nice distraction. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that they could pull this thing off. And of course, we are incredibly vulnerable here in America. Our infrastructure is incredibly vulnerable. Our border is vulnerable. You could have individual saboteurs come across the border very easily, come into this country and take out massive amounts of infrastructure. That's the kind of stuff, really, when you look at Ukraine and Russia, they're attacking each other's infrastructure, power generation stations and stuff like that. That's really going to be the key issue there. And that's something that they could easily do here in America as a false flag attack and blame it on anybody they wanted to blame it on.
You got it. In cyber war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Of course, the cyber war, when they do that, we even had the CIA had their tools hacked, and WikiLeaks first put out the manual, that was Vault 7, showing that they could disguise themselves to look like anybody that they wanted to look like. And then the entire code was leaked by the people who stole it. So now I guess even the small countries can make it look like they're anybody that they want to make it look like. And so whenever they tell you that there's a cyber attack and it was done by our enemy over there, you can take that with a grain of salt. There's no way that they can determine that. They've even got programs to make it look like it's whoever they want to make it look like.
They'll make up anything they want.
Yeah.
And again, they lie all the time.
Right.
You forgot that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're back to baby incubator time now again, I guess.
Yeah, remember that one?
Kuwait, yeah.
Oh, and who was the woman that was the saying this? That was her father was what? An ambassador or something. There was a whole lie. Mm-hmm. And the people they bought from the old man Bush and from that little clown boy, his son.
That's right. And I just remind people again, when you talk about the lies about weapons of mass destruction, that was one of the things when Trump was running for president the first time. He was talking about the fact that we were lied into war with Iraq. And that was unusual for a politician that's running for presidency to say that the entire Iraq war was based on a lie about weapons of mass destruction. And yet he put Gina Haspel, the person who covered all of that up, the person who sent the whistleblower, John Kiriakou, to prison, he put her in charge of the CIA. So on the one hand, Trump tells us this is all based on a lie. There were no weapons of mass destruction. And then he puts the chief liar and torturer in charge of the CIA. That tells you a lot about Trump, doesn't it?
Yep. And you better be careful what you say, because people, they love Trump so much. I just got somebody posted on after I did the podcast last night. My shotgun wants to blow your brains out.
Wow.
You effing guinea. Yep.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
That's something I've been seeing for quite some time. I haven't gotten any death threats.
I'm getting a number of them.
Wow. That's amazing.
And again, you can't come out against Trump, mm-hmm. because you got to believe Trump's lies. You mm-hmm. don't believe the lies? How about this one? This is when he's running for president back in 2024. We want to have peace on earth all over.
Mm-hmm.
September 25th. We're going to have peace through strength. We will not have to fight. October 12th, 2024. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. October 20th, 2024.
Yeah.
I'm moving quickly to end wars, settle conflicts, and restore the planet to peace. I want peace. January 25th, 2025. One lie after another.
Oh, yeah.
One lie right after another. How many times did he bomb Somalia? I think it's about 130 times now. Bombed Iraq, bombed Iran, bombed Syria, bombed Yemen, kidnapped the president of Venezuela and his wife, killing people on boats against international law.
That's right.
Killing them right in front of, right? Nobody cares.
That's right. That's right. Nobody does. It's a shame. And you know, when you look at him lying, just the whole justification, he didn't say much at all about Iran. He doesn't have to. He just does whatever he wants. And yet, people called out Susan Levitt, the White House spokesperson, yesterday. I played the clip. They said, Trump said with Operation Warhammer, or whatever he called that thing, said he destroyed all the nuclear capability of Iran. He's boasting about that. And yet now we have to go back because Steve Witkoff says they're just a couple of weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. Says, how can both of these things be true?
You mean Steve Jerkoff?
Yeah. How can both these things be true? They're mutually exclusive.
Witkoff, Jerkoff, Lutnick, Skutnik, Slutnik. Look at the slime balls that we got. Look at them.
That's right. That's right. And so they tell you in the same statement about what is happening with Iran, they contradict themselves. And of course, she accuses the mainstream media of lying about everything when she's lying about what's going on with Iran and the nuclear program. The same lies that we've been told from Netanyahu for over 30 years. And then right after she has that encounter in the afternoon, Trump repeats all of that stuff as part of his State of the Disunion. You know, he says, we destroyed their nuclear program, and so now we got to go back and destroy their nuclear program.
Yeah.
And nobody ever calls him on that. It's truly amazing.
We have an article, a guest article in this week's Trends Journal. Trump is Netanyahu's puppet.
Yeah. Yep.
That's by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, who was the former Assistant Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan. That's the same Paul Craig Roberts that wrote this article in the Trends Journal back in 2014. Washington is driving the world to the final war. World hegemony is not a right America has earned.
That's right.
Washington concluded that Russia needed to be confronted with or distracted by problems that would leave the Russian government less confident or able to counter Washington's aggression elsewhere. Ukraine presented the perfect opportunity to Washington to advance its hegemonic agenda. In a speech at the National Press Club last December, which was 2013, Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland boasted that Washington had invested $5 billion in non-governmental organizations, NGOs, in Ukraine for the purpose to teach democracy.
Democracy meaning coups, right?
They overthrew the government, the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych.
Yeah.
People have no idea about this. Not a word. Oh, and who did it? Oh, the Azovs, the Nazi Ukrainians. Yeah, that created that false thing at Maidan Square.
Yeah.
People have no idea about this. So anyway, another article by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts in this week's Trends Journal about how Trump is Netanyahu's puppet. Oh, and I forgot about Sheldon Adelson's wife, Marion Adelson. How much did she give Trump in his election? They say between $100 million to $250 million. This is the Trump that when her husband, Sheldon Adelson, gave him $100 million, he moved the Trump, when he was president the last time, moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And said to Israel, hey, you know that land you stole from Syria? In the Golan Heights, it's yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's basically what Huckabee's saying this week. You know, the entire Middle East belongs to you.
Huckabee.
So, yeah.
Oh, by the way, that was the other thing. Huckabee, you talk about Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
How the hell could this little piece of crap jerk off over there in South Carolina keep getting so much damn press for decades?
Yeah.
Little Lindsey Ballis Graham.
Yeah. That's right.
And I gotta hear this crap shooting out of this clown boy's mouth. Now, I'll tell you a story. Back in the day, I used to be on all the major media. You remember?
Right.
And I'm up here in Kingston, as you came. You've been up here. Back in the day, they used to have the satellite trucks doing the broadcast live.
Mm-hmm.
Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Obama's overthrowing the government of Libya, right? I'm on with a former CIA guy on Fox. And what happens? We got to take a break now. We got to cut. Senator Lindsey Graham would be on. This is a live broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
I got to hear about Senator Lindsey Graham. They've been promoting this little piece of scum for how many decades? A little nobody.
That's right.
A little nobody who loves war that couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag.
And what does that tell us about the Machiavellian industrial complex? These people who are making millions every time they fire off a missile. Yeah, of course, we want more missiles fired off. I mean, that's one of the things Dan King was saying. He says, we've depleted so many of our missiles, during defending Israel and giving them away to Ukraine, all the rest of the stuff. We don't have any left for our wars, So I guess we're going to have to write a big fat check to the Machiavellian industrial complex. And of course, that's why Lindsey Graham is on all the time, isn't it? Because he's their salesman.
Yep. A little nobody.
Yeah, that's right.
Literally a ballless little clown. Or is it Miss Lindsey Graham?
Yeah, that's right. So
a little nothing. These little scumbags that wants to go like a huckleberry, a dingleberry. Go fight or shut your mouth.
Yeah, I agree.
Anybody that supports war in another country, go over there and fight or shut your damn mouth.
Yeah, Mike Huckabee is not an ambassador for the U.S. He's not an ambassador for Christ either. That's the reality of both of those things.
Fairy tales.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear your fairy tale anymore.
Well, he's got it wrong in terms of what he's looking at, I believe. And he's completely lost the plot that Christ gave us. That's the key thing. And he doesn't care about America either. He doesn't even regret, his meeting with Jonathan Pollard, one of the biggest traitors to the U.S. ever. He supports that because Huckabee himself is a traitor, I think.
We wrote about that in the magazine this week.
Yeah, I think we got to reestablish the connect. No, we don't. Okay. Are we okay, Travis? Okay, we're going to keep going here. I think we're all right for a little while longer here. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the marketplace because, the Dow at 50,000, he mentioned that again. And Pam Bondi said, shut up. Stop asking me questions about Trump raping kids. The Dow's at 50,000. Somebody put out a meme showing the stock market crashing and said, well, can we now investigate Epstein now that it's below 50,000? And of course, when we look at the stock market, it's not only the fact that most Americans don't have any equities in the stock market. And as a matter of fact, when you look at the stock market, the rising Dow is based on the fact that you've got just a couple of stocks around AI like NVIDIA and others. And it's such a narrow rally that it kind of looks like a needle, doesn't it? That could be busting a bubble. And so what do you see happening with that?
Well, again, we have a number of articles in the Trends Journal about the money leaving the equity markets and going to Europe and Asia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when you look, they're bragging about the Dow at 5,000. But when you're looking at how much the other equity markets are going up, America is way behind.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Was that the Dow at 5 or 50? I forget. There's one of them. They have different exchanges that are there. But the key issue that Trump doesn't want to talk about is, well, let's look at gold at 5,000, right? You want to talk about your stock index at 50,000. What about gold, and why is gold there? That's a vote of no confidence from a large marketplace, I think.
Yes, we went on the air. Gold was at about $5,190.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And silver keeps breaking over the marks. It's way beyond. It's below where it's high, but still way up there. And precious metals are going up because the global economy is going down. Again, we have an article in this week's Trends Journal. It's in our economic update, showing about how the money's flooding out of America, and we write, indeed, this is also one reason why Europe's stock markets are gaining record inflows as investors pivot away from U.S. equities.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is that all this overinvesting in AI. And according to LSEG data, stocks Europe 600 trades at a PE ratio of 18.3. The S&P in the United States, the PE ratio, 27.7.
Wow.
It's way, way overvalued.
Yeah.
Again, the money is pouring out of the country in stocks and going to other nations. And again, what we're saying is, here, they just had a big meeting in India last week. It was called the India AI Impact Summit.
Mm-hmm.
Hardly reported in the mainstream media. You had the top people, the top high-tech guys from Google, all of them, going over to India. India's going high-tech. China's going high-tech AI. They're investing very heavily in this.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be good to math to figure this out. You put India and China together, what do you got? 2.8 billion people?
Yeah.
Versus
right.
346 million in America?
Yep.
And then you had a lot of world leaders going to this AI Impact Summit in India.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go AI. They overinvested in the AI markets in America. And as you pointed out, it's the few companies, the quote Magnificent Seven and others, that have jacked up the equity markets. There's going to be a dot-com bust 2.0 in America. They're going to crash.
Yeah.
Asia, China, and India are going to lead the charge. You're talking earlier, before I even came on the air, about the United States ramping up the war with Iran and all the ships out there, the money being spent. The business of America is war, and the business of China and India is business.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the key thing. If we're smart about this, we understand it's not the trade deficit, it's the budget deficit of our government. And that is completely being ignored by Trump. Many people have pointed out in the past that that in and of itself is a huge threat to our safety and security. It's a threat to our economic security as well as our safety. Because always in the past, when you look at how America has prospered and done, I shouldn't say prosper, but how they've done well in war, that's been predominantly based on our productive capacity. Whether you're talking about World War I, World War II, or the Civil War, things like that. That is really the key thing. And if we are so heavily in debt, we can't do that. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to reestablish connection. We've got a tech issue here. And Gerald, we're going to be right back. So watch for the thing from Travis, and we'll be right back with you. Hang on, folks. We'll be right back.
In a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. You're listening to The David Knight Show. You're listening to The David Knight Show. Making sense common again. You're listening to The David Knight Show.
All right, sorry for the interruption, but we're back with Gerald Celente, and there's a couple of other things I wanted to cover that are in today's newly released Trends Journal at trendsjournal.com. Robots not able to fill worker shortage, says a Chinese executive. This is one of the articles you've got, and this is kind of unusual because we're so used to seeing the hype from U.S. AI executives that they can do everything and they can do it now. They're actually tamping down the expectations a little bit, aren't they?
Yeah, again, they're doing it so you keep investing in their companies. That's why they keep doing it. And that's the same thing with the whole AI. But it's going to be the future, but it's not right now. Trends are born, they grow, they mature, reach old age, and die. The robotic trend is still in infancy. But it's going to be the future. And when you put the robots and the AI together, you're going to see a lot of jobs lost.
Yeah.
And what happened when the beginning of the week, you saw the equity markets on Monday really take a crash because of these new AI that's making a lot of software companies, they don't need them anymore. And you saw a big drop in them, but then it came back up because, well, we're going to work together and make, no. It's going away. AI is the future. Again, you look at the data and how the kids in school, they're not learning anything anymore. They're all chatting it out.
Yeah.
It's the future. Love it, hate it, want it, don't want it. Another article just came out, it was in the news, about how young people aren't going out dancing anymore.
Yes. Yeah. They don't do anything. They stay at home and, interact with the computer.
Exactly.
But while we're talking about the manufacturing stuff and everything, I said for the longest time, even going back to Trump's first administration, said we're going to reshore manufacturing. I said they're not going to reshore manufacturing until the robots are ready. And now we got Lutnick just the last couple of weeks basically saying the same thing. This is going to be great. We're going to have completely automated factories and all the rest of the stuff. So it's like your manufacturing jobs are not going to be coming back. They're only going to bring back the manufacturing when they've got the robots that are going to be able to do this stuff, when they can replace people with this. And it's not just going to be the robots walking around that are have 2 legs and 2 arms. They've got a lot of robots, for example, at Amazon, and just like you see with the the car companies, robot arms that are there, or robots that are like Roombas that get underneath a shelving thing and pick it up and move it to another spot and go through and pick the shelves. That's what they're going to be doing.
And think about it. Think about the Industrial Revolution, how it began, and how it keeps getting more and more industrialized. So it's the future. And it's going, again, you got to put all the trends together. Look at the Gen Z. One of our things is a Gen Z revolution. They're overthrowing countries all around the world. And look what happened in New York City, the biggest city in America. They elected a guy that nobody ever heard of a year ago.
Yeah.
This is Zoran Mandani. How come? Because Gen Z has no jobs. And this guy calls himself a democratic socialist. Don't worry about it. You don't have a job, get free healthcare, free bus rides. We're going to have government stores, grocery stores, one thing after another. We're not going to allow you to raise the rent. We're going to build more buildings so you can live in, more projects. There's no future for the young people.
Yeah.
And that's why you're seeing this Gen Z revolution. And it goes back to robotics. It's going to happen. It's just not there yet, but it's going to keep increasing.
He's offering them jobs shoveling snow.
Yeah.
And their controls are so lax. They got all these people laughing about it and putting it up on social media. Yeah, I just showed up. I got a shovel and just walked out here and I didn't do anything at all. Just took the paycheck. And that's basically.
But again, they have no future.
Yeah.
The big zone everything.
That's right. That's right.
When you and I were young guys, I say this all the time. There were grocery stores, hardware stores, drug stores, shoe stores, clothing stores, fish stores. Now they're all chains. Again, it's not my language, the language of a guy by the name of Benito Mussolini. The merger of state and corporate powers is called fascism.
That's right.
Welcome to America.
And they can't compete against Wall Street because Wall Street has got essentially unlimited amounts of money available to them. Look at Moderna. They operated for 10 years before Trump gave them the warp speed position and gave them a lot of money to build their manufacturing stuff for it. But they never had a product. They always had happy stories. And they would put these stories out there and they'd pump and dump it on Wall Street and make a lot of money. And for years, we competed against Blockbuster, the video stores. And they didn't have a profit after they were bought by Paramount, by, so what's the holding company had Paramount? It's Sumner Redstone, Viacom. Viacom bought Blockbuster and they never made a profit again after that. But they continued on like a zombie company for like 15 years because they kept getting money from Wall Street. They didn't have to compete on Main Street. As a matter of fact, they could build additional stores. And that's what they did where we were. They would pick one small mom and pop chain at a time and they would put a store in front of every one of their stores until they drove them out of business. Then they'd pick another mom and pop and do that. And they were doing that as they were losing money left and right, but they were getting the money from Wall Street. It's like the Federal Reserve financing a bankrupt federal government. So it's almost impossible to compete against Wall Street and the big box retailers anymore. Yeah.
Again, it's Here, this is one of your covers of the Trends Journal back in 2011. All right?
Yep.
Nothing's changed.
That's right.
Oh, Christ went into the temple. Who was here? Oh, Citi, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs. Again, they talk about the equity markets. The top 1% own 54% of the equities. When you put the 10% in, the numbers will be around 92%, which means 90% of we, the people of slave land here, own 8% of the equity markets.
Yeah, that's right. That's why it didn't matter to anybody when Pam Bondi tried to deflect from the Epstein things. Like, come on, guys, the Dow's at 50,000 or whatever. It's like, who cares, Epstein lady? We don't really care. That you're talking to your donors there. You're telling your donors, we'll keep protecting you from exposure with Epstein because the stock market is doing well. So stick with us.
Oh, like the cover of the magazine last week. If Epstein's name was Epsteino, it'd be a different story. Hey, the mafia. Hey, look at the mafia. Look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. Hey. All right.
That's right.
If he was an Italian, oh my God, hey, but he's a Zionist cat.
Yeah.
All right? So shut up.
That's right. Working with the CIA, working with Mossad,
Yep.
that's your license to
Again,
do whatever
if his
you
name
wish.
was Epsteino, all of this data would be released. That they're holding back this data is disgusting.
Yeah.
It's a disgrace.
It is. It is. Well, one thing we've seen this last week as well, we didn't have much time to touch on it, is the total betrayal of this idea they're going to make America healthy again. That bit the dust big time with not only compelling, an order from Trump saying we're going to ramp up the production of glyphosate, and we're going to give them liability protection by bringing in a Defense Production Act that's there. Total betrayal of what he promised people, as well as the fact the Trump administration is pushing back against fluoride. But you got an article about how high exposure to ultra-processed foods in early years can make your child dumb. Talk about that. It's another one of these things like fluoride, right? The chemicals in these things.
Again, look at, there used to be a song by Fats Domino. They call me the fat man, 'cause I weighed 200 pounds.
Yeah.
That was 1949. I looked it up. The average weight of men back in 1949 was 155 pounds.
Ah.
Now the average weight is 206 pounds.
Wow.
And you're talking about how it affects your brain.
Mm-hmm.
This is how it, in our Trends Journal this week. This is how it, again, it went out last night. Tonight, President Trump will deliver his State of the Union address at the U.S. Capitol. According to a new Reuters Ipsos poll, 61% of Americans say that Trump has, quote, become erratic with age, which means essentially he's out of his mind.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with being erratic with age. I'm the same age as Trump. The older you get, and if you keep on learning, the smarter you get. It's because he eats crap food. Look at him.
Yeah, he's teasing all this stuff about the UFO thing, and somebody did an AI joke video. It showed this UFO guy on the lawn of the White House and goes in, and now Trump is sitting there with him in the Oval Office, and he introduces him as an extra cholesterol as the two of them are eating McDonald's. Well, that's all the time we got for today. Thank you so much for joining us, Gerald. And again, the new Trends Journal out today, and you can save 10% off of it. Get it for $2.50 a week. A tremendous amount of information that's at Trends Journal. Thank you so much, Gerald. Have a good day.
Thank you.
The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.